Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Margolick. I'm another one of the 92 Archive Research Fellows. I would like to start off first by thanking the Conney Conference, Bernard Schwartz, and the 92Y for offering me this fellowship and opportunity to look through the 92Y archives. I would also like to thank John Mario for offering me studio space here at the Y. For this research, I mainly sourced out all the personal information I could find in the archives regarding the Clara Hirsch Home for Working Girls and then YWHA between the years of 1899 to 1946 around. For this research, this information came by way of dormitory committee meetings, aftercare follow-up committees, medical evaluations, and the employment counselor reports. In that sense, it was almost never from the residents' perspectives. If you're not familiar with the Clara Hirsch home, it was called the Home for Working Girls, and it was mainly for immigrant women who came either from abroad, they also had Americans, mainly Jewish, they had girls as young as 13 up to 35. What they wanted to do was teach them English, train them for new jobs, and basically get them on their feet. It was a true community. Anyways, so the personal information, reading through all these committees and through the board members, this therefore created a filter through which I saw the residents. And what I was struck most by was the empathy, most of the time, the generosity and hard work of these committees and of the staff of both the Clara Hirsch home and the YWHA. So even though I was focusing on the residents, I felt like I got to know the staff. Of course, it wasn't all roses in these residences. There were many instances of mental illness, poor health, frustration, and not to mention the extremely high standards set for women during those years. The residents ranged from girls as young as 13 up to women in their mid-30s at times. Many of them unable to, or at times refusing to, pay their board rates and racking up debts to the YWHA. Yet, the level of care, the following up on their lives, the community, the job training, the medical attention, the scholarships to go to school, the Ray Hill Recreation Camp, et cetera, within it all, the level of deep humanity and dedication to better women's lives in both of these institutions deeply resonated with me. Something that struck me was that before looking through the archives, my own mind, I was expecting to read much more about the residents getting married, that being the main reason why which they would leave the residence. Of course, on many occasions, that was the reason. And in the earlier days, the education training focused on domestic services training women to become housewives. But many of these women were self-supporting, working, strong, independent women, mainly Jews, but also not. Many lived with their friends, acquaintances, or eventually made enough to rent their own apartments or go to college, some even studying medicine. And of course, during World War II, many women took over the jobs of the men who left to fight, becoming technicians, factory workers, etc. Sadly, many of them losing those jobs when the men came home, only to face rising rampant discriminatory practices. I was emboldened by these women. I was emboldened by their resolve and their resilience, many of which came from extreme hardship, immigrated, or didn't fit into society. From the finding aids that Bernard Schwartz so helpfully put together, I knew where my best chances were to find personal information on the residents. Because of this, I ended up jumping around throughout the time between the years 1899 to 1949. I wasn't necessarily interested in organizing my findings chronologically, because I'm doing this research to create a contemporary dance solo, which I'll get to in a second. And through this, name after name, comment after comment, job after job, address after address, I found myself getting lost amongst a group of mostly nameless women who we know extremely little about. I wanted to illuminate what I could find on these women. I wanted to take them off the page and somehow bring them back to life in my body and create these characters in my mind, whilst recognizing and grappling with the sheer number of stories and histories there are to tell from the great Jewish women who came before us in New York City. Before I begin, I would just like to add that what you're about to see including my research and knowledge on this history, is just in its beginning phase. The piece you're about to see is very much a work in progress, and I am currently just at the tip of the iceberg. I was going to do this before, but I think I'm going to perform first, and then we'll have some time so you can all come up. I've reprinted my favorite texts that I found regarding on these women, and these little postcards over by the door. So maybe after I finish, it will give some context to what you're about to see. And if you can come over, you can pick them up, walk around with them, read them, share them. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to dance. So a little non-traditional, something different from the rest of the past few days. It's going to be about 10 minutes. And then afterwards, I will read, I'm going to read a letter from one of the residents, which is the only, I think one of 3 actual pieces of text that I found from a resident, not from these board members talking about the residents. So I'm using, I use the text to inspire the movement mostly. I thought a lot about history, about the passing of time, the fact that time is not linear in our heads, despite the world it being linear. And eventually I'd love to incorporate more women, female identifying people into this project to talk about their lineage, the history of their people. Anyways, so I'm going to read a letter by Charlotte David, written in 1946. She was a longtime resident of the Clara Hirsch home. And this was read at the memorial service for Miss Strauss, Sarah Strauss, who was the founding president of the Clara Hirsch home and remained involved pretty much until her death. So I thought this illuminates the home nicely. This is an honor and pleasure I never expected to have. I've known the Clara Hirsch for a long time, and I have a great deal of feeling for it. However, it is not only for myself that I'm speaking today, but also for the dozens and dozens of girls who have lived here and are living here now. The Clara Hirsch is not just a building at 63rd Street, which contains a certain number of rooms suitable for living quarters. It is, to me, and a great many other people, home. New York is an awfully big city when you move into it and when you are young. It is a frightening city, especially when you know no one. To be able then to move into the Clara Hirsch is a most valuable opportunity. The city has many services to offer, but not in the same personal interested fashion as the Clara Hirsch. I cannot hope to tell you in the few minutes allotted to me what the Clara Hirsch has meant and will continue to mean to a great many people. I can tell you, however, that the knowledge that there are people in the city, in this very building, with whom you can discuss anything from the latest quarrel with your boyfriend to the relative merits of your new gloves, which is a most comforting thing. An additional advantage to be had at the Clara Hirsch is the feeling of belonging to a group, an especially enjoyable feeling when you have moved into a new place and are scared stiff. This building, which represents to others a lot of space, becomes for us a thoroughfare on which we meet people and make friends. The opportunities for recreation have been unlimited. I believe we've just about had everything from birthday cakes to dramatics. As a matter of fact, we always have, before, tried to express our feelings for the Clara Hirsch and its staff in the form of humorous skits and verses. Perhaps because there is warmth in laughter, and it is so much easier to laugh at something about one feels deeply. I feel at this point that I've been singularly unsuccessful in conveying any real idea of the way we all feel about it. But I should like to close with the hope that the Clara Hirsch will remain where it is and what it has been for a great many years to come. Thank you.